solid as possible. Pack it with the heaviest metals and you'll survive anything. And that was kind of true. I mean, if you looked at photos of 1950s cars right after a crash, they actually do look completely fine. But it's the passengers inside who are not. It's around this time that companies realize that if the car isn't absorbing the impact, then energy is going to go straight to either the people sitting in that car or the people hit by that car, which is why the surrounding metal on this is so much thinner, and why in future cars they start to create crumple zones, where the front and back are actually designed to compress in a collision. And it's why not all, but many of the wooden parts have been swapped for plastic, which was kind of the miracle material of this era. Plastic production went bananas during World War II, because you had to use it for aircraft windows and parachutes. But then, as soon as the war ended, it became suddenly endlessly available to civilians. Oh my goodness, these buttons as well. I feel like I've literally purchased an ASMR button press simulator. Everything feels incredible here. And then also this is actually the gear stick right behind the wheel. And if you want to indicate, you rotate the inner wheel. You can kind of see why that's gone out of fashion. Oh yeah, I find this really funny. So you actually now have proper air vents for both cold and hot air. But you know that cold air? That's actually just coming straight from a vent underneath here. So basically just road air. It does feel a little bit cheaper than the Nürburgring, but that's because it was. And that, combined with the fact that Mercedes now had proper production lines, which meant that each car could be manufactured in basically a few days instead of several weeks, is what allowed the company to break out. It meant that while the Nürburgring was entirely for aristocrats, this was actually affordable by the middle class. And that makes all the difference, because the Ponton actually went on to sell 73,000 units, basically 20 times the Nürburgring. But now we get to the Big Daddy, the very first S-Class in 1972. So Mercedes has already been making luxury cars for a long time at this point, but S-Class was special. No, literally, the S is short for Sonder, which in German means special. See, up until this point, Mercedes luxury cars were very much all about just having a smooth, laid-back ride in the backseat of your chauffeur-driven car. But this is the turning point, at which it also became about maximum safety and maximum speed. Two things that do not traditionally go hand in hand. But speed was important. Now that everyone kind of had somewhat comfy cars, at least in the US, the way to make yourself luxury now was the ability to get to your location faster than other people. This was like the new meta for how people would flaunt their success. So there's tons of little improvements. Like, for example, they've now ribbed their lights so that it's harder for dirt to get on the inside. And then for the lights that aren't ribbed, an actual dedicated wiper. And then the windshields, like this is a rain gutter. So when you're getting absolutely splattered on the front, it's not streaking all the way around your car. It's actually collecting here and getting channeled away. But then the first big one was the engine. A 6.9 litre, nice, 8-cylinder that could get you 0 to 60 miles per hour in 7.4 seconds. This was, even to date, the biggest engine Mercedes has ever used in a car. Like, just for perspective, the competition at this time from Rolls-Royce and Cadillac, they were much closer to 10 seconds to get to 60. So this was absurdly impressive, like Ferrari-level performance. And I absolutely plan on testing that theory. Fun fact, my first time ever trying to drive on this side of the road. It is highly confusing. That's why you start me off in something worth, what is this, like $300,000?
Yeah, roughly.
Okay. Yeah, okay, right, here we go. Whoa! Woohoo! That's the stuff. I can absolutely see the appeal of this vehicle in the 1970s. So you can kind of see why the second big change is that this was also the first car to feature the electronic anti-braking system, or ABS, that has basically become a mandatory requirement in newer cars. If you suddenly hit the brakes while going really fast, there's actually a computer inside of here that is paying attention to each one of your wheels. Then instead of just locking all four wheels and therefore making the car skid forward, this computer would notice when one of the wheels is about to stop spinning entirely, and then just before it does, quickly reduce the brake pressure on that wheel, allowing you to still have some control of the car and steer away of an animal that's just run onto the road, for example. I mean, considering how powerful the thing is, it was also surprisingly floaty to drive, which makes a lot of sense given that by this point Mercedes has also introduced air suspension, essentially replacing the coiled springs that would sit between the car and the wheels with rubber bladders that are filled with pressurized air. If you put more things in the car and it gets heavier, then the car just pumps more air into those bladders to lift it back up again. That, or it's just these incredibly bouncy seats. Like, these actually feel like Mercedes just got a bunch of packing foam and stuffed it inside. You can hear it, right? It's very rustly. Upside is it's kind of like the 4D experience while you're driving. Oh yeah. Still absolutely like top class haptics. This is fidget pleasure that money can't buy. But ultimately, it's not that surprising that the 1972 S-Class sold outstandingly well. 473,000 units. The car was a big improvement, the car market was exploding globally, and the branding worked. S-Class started to become a symbol that people aspired to. But then we hit a road bump. The 1970s had a massive oil crisis. Oil prices, and therefore petrol and diesel prices too, basically quadrupled in the US, thanks to a restriction from oil supplying countries, which, while definitely a problem for car manufacturers, also created a massive opportunity because people suddenly wanted to buy more fuel-efficient cars. So while Mercedes already did a lot of work with the Ponton back in the day to cut back some of the weight and streamline the thing, with the 1979 S-Class, these efficiency improvements were like the entire game. So the materials are quite a lot lighter. Like even the bumpers here are now made of plastic instead of the chrome they were before, which also means they can absorb the impact from a parking bump with no damage at all, which I will not be testing. Plus, I find this so fascinating. This is the first time that Mercedes also started using CAD, or computer-aided design, while planning out the shape of their cars. See, the tradition was you make a massive clay model, you take that model to a tunnel, and you see how smoke passes around that clay model to determine how aerodynamic it is, by eye. So obviously, that was a very slow, imprecise process. So finally being able to visualize and fine-tune simulations thousands of times on a computer meant that you could make a lot more micro refinements before the car went into production. Like how, even just the front of the car is a lot more rounded off compared to its predecessor. The wipers, they're now way more recessed. They can basically disappear when not in use. Even the underside of the car, like if you compare this 1979 model to the 1972, it is a lot smoother, which reduces the turbulence of the air. Again, good for streamlining. You put all these little tunings together and it actually makes a massive difference. In just 7 years, the drag coefficient has come all the way down from 0.45 on the original S-Class to 0.36. The second big change this time around is airbag. Yes, singular. Only the driver gets one here. But still, like when you think about how this actually works, it must have felt like a miracle at the time. It involves a bunch of sensors in the car that can detect very sudden deceleration, which, if you think about it, is a sign that you've hit something hard. Those sensors have to send a signal very quickly then to a pyrotechnic igniter that essentially sets off a controlled explosion inside the car, which is the only way that you could produce gas fast enough to inflate those airbags in time. While this is happening, your seatbelt, which now has pre-tensioners fitted inside of it, tightens to keep you in the right place for the airbag. And then, as you hit that airbag, they have also got to make sure that it has just the right amount of vents so that you aren't just bouncing off the thing. It's got to deflate with your head. All of that happens within 30 milliseconds after impact in this car. Blinking your eye is about 100. It's insane. There's no such thing as an official car safety rating at this time, but the tests that Mercedes did on this car to show how safe it was ended up becoming most of the global crash test requirements later on. A lot of very interesting things going on with this interior as well. So there's a switch down here that actually allows you to change the tone and volume of your horn depending on if you're in the city or if you're in the country. Or alternatively, just how pissed you are. You're either this or you're this. Oh! Then this alarm clock looking thing is essentially the first time you'd have had access to preemptive car heating. You could pop in first thing in the morning and tell your car that in 20 minutes time you want it warm. I didn't expect the tech would be so advanced in 1979. Oh yeah, and then this little wheel here is actually probably my favorite bit. This allows you to choose where in the car the speakers are the loudest. So dial it all the way forward and the two people in the front seat can hear it. And dial it all the way back, it's party time in the back seat. A lot more squishy, soft-touch plastics in the cabin as well. Ooh. I combine all of that and you can see why this was a golden era for Mercedes. This actually became the best-selling Mercedes-Benz luxury saloon of all time with 818,000 units. But while the 1979 S-Class was the car that started to reap the benefits from the whole computing revolution that was happening at the time, it was only in 1991 that Mercedes truly capitalized on it. So while before the vast majority of car features still used to be controlled by mechanical parts, levers, springs, etc., This was the car in which a lot of that was replaced by microchips. There were microchips in the suspension system, so the car felt smooth and floaty when you're on the motorway, but then stable and planted as soon as you start turning a corner. There are microchips in the engine, which meant that while before, when you pressed the accelerator pedal, you were physically pulling a cable that opened the engine's throttle, kind of like tugging on a string to open a flap. It's different here. Here, you press that accelerator pedal and you're actually sending a signal to an engine computer, which handles the acceleration smoother and less suddenly on-off jerky. There are microchips responsible for the boot, with the ability to know when it's not completely closed and to pull it into position. Not to mention this absolutely sick button that releases a handle almost out of nowhere so that you can lift up your boot without greasing up the car that you've just cleaned today. There are even chips controlling the interior. Like, this car could manage the temperature separately for driver and passenger. There is even a microchip in the frickin' door to save your seat settings. Like, look at this. Look, if I hold number 2, it's going to move everything. It's moving the mirrors, it's moving the steering wheel, it's moving my seat forward. This is more advanced than, like, most cars nowadays. Just generally, though, this 1991 S-Class became widely known for being insanely over-engineered, but in the best kind of way. Mercedes spent so much money just trying to make this the best, most imposing thing on the road that for the first few years, they were actually losing money while selling this thing. You can kind of see why. Like, this is the first time one of these cars feels silent to drive. I'm basically able to talk to you at almost whisper volume, which is kind of insane considering that the engine is still absolutely powerful. It's like 402 horsepower compared to the 0.75 we started with. Oh, but also, you want to talk about things that are extra. These windows right here, they are double glazed acoustic windows. Just listen to the difference between when it's open and when it's closed. Oh yeah, you want to see the single most straight out of a Transformers movie thing that I think I've ever seen on a car? Put it into reverse and parking rods will actually extend from the vehicle so that when you're reversing, you have a visual indicator of where the car is because the thing's just so damn big. Can you believe that these two cars are 7 years apart? If you told me they were 70 years apart, I probably believed you, but no, this is the 1998 S-Class. And the change is partly an efficiency thing, with the 1998 car now having an even tinier drag coefficient of just 0.27 compared to the 0.31 of the 1991 model. But the even bigger thing here is societal change. In the 80s and the early 90s, people who had lots of money wanted to show it. Lots of shiny metal and gold, pop-up headlights, big spoilers. But by the end of the 90s, high-income buyers had shifted more towards quiet luxury. If you know, kind of became the new status symbol. And this is very much that. Kind of embodied by one of the new features, keyless go. So this is the first Mercedes car for which this key fob emits a radio signal that is picked up by sensors in the door handles, which means all you have to do to open it is to have the key somewhere on you and touch the door handles. It's understated, but slick. The car is lower, it's a little bit smaller. To be honest, when this thing came out, a lot of people hated how generic the thing looked. People called it a bar of soap on wheels.